Hey guys, Sam from West Meadow Rabbits here. As you can see, spring is officially sprung here in southern New England, and I am super excited to see things growing again. Part of that process is going to be fertilizing my gardens, which dovetails nicely with a question you often hear people ask, and that is, what do I do with all this rabbit manure? Now, if you've had meat rabbits before, you obviously know they produce a ton of manure. That's probably mostly because of the fact that their diet is so rich in fiber, and unlike true ruminants such as cows and sheep, they don't fully digest that fiber, and that's also what makes rabbit manure so nutritious. As far as nutrient contents goes, it's right up there with chicken manure, and it's better than cow manure as far as the fertilizer, specifically for nitrogen, but it's also got a ton of other nutrients in it because, like I said, a lot of those nutrients aren't fully extracted from the fibrous material that our rabbits are eating, so it makes a fantastic fertilizer. The other benefit of rabbit manure is, unlike chicken manure, which is extremely high in nitrogen, you can put rabbit manure directly onto plants without burning them. However, this is usually inconvenient for me. You guys may be able to sell some manure directly to gardeners. I know lots of people made a good little enterprise out of that. Because rabbit manure is already basically pelleted, they can gather it all up and sell it. You could even sell it right in your feed bags to gardeners, and a smart gardener will realize what a bargain rabbit manure is as a fertilizer and will happily take it off your hands. However, if you can't find a market for your manure, or you just have too much, there is plenty of value we can still get out of it. The number one way I use my manure is for compost, specifically for fertilizing my food beds, fruit trees, and any plant that I really want to go gangbusters. The way I do that is by basically making a very basic compost. Now, I know a lot of people and organic farmers have very elaborate composting routines, messing with the nutrients, making sure you get a hot pile so you kill off any weed seeds. And that's all well and dandy, and if you've got the time and resources to really master composting, I highly recommend it. It's a valuable skill. I don't, so I sort of just ballpark it and deal with the rest from there. As you can see behind me, I have a couple manure heaps in various stages of decomposition, and it works out well for me. Basically, the key tenet with compost is you have to balance nitrogen or hot composting products with carbon-rich products to basically lock up that nitrogen. That way your pile doesn't decompose too fast or too slow, and you get a good balance. Now, again, like I said, there's a lot of ratios you could really mess with, but for me, it just works out because I have a good amount of carbon that goes in with my rabbit manure. You can already see I've got some white pine shavings in this pile, and that's because most of the manure that comes to my compost heaps actually comes primarily from my shed, which you guys have seen. Now, that's an indoor area, and I put shavings down all throughout the winter and summer, just right on top of layers of manure to keep the smell down and keep insects down. And I don't do that in my outdoor pen because it's outside and it's got better ventilation. You probably won't be using pine shavings if you are in an outdoor setting. If you're in a garage, you probably will, or a shed, just to lock up some of that nitrogen, which is what produces that ammonia smell that is really irritating to rabbits and humans. However, since I have a good balance here, my piles tend to work out very nicely. In addition, outside, I feed a lot of hay, and a lot of that hay falls through, which also acts as somewhat carbon-rich product that gets mixed in as well. If you don't have pine shavings, or you're not doing pine shavings, that's not really a problem. Like I said, rabbit manure is not as hot as chicken manure, so it could even just be on the pile by itself. But I integrate these piles with everything else in my yard, so I've got a lot of space, obviously, but extra leaves that I happen to have handy, dead plants, kitchen scraps, these all go into the pile, and you can adjust the ratios. If you've got leaves or wood chips and you really want to slow down your compost pile, you can use wood chips. As you see my video on chip drop, I've got plenty of free wood chips kicking around, so if I really wanted to, I could. However, don't stress it. If you just leave it in the pile and let it rot for a year, you're gonna have good compost. So let's break down real quick what I've got going on back here and show you how I use it. So as you can see here, I've got really 3 piles in 3 different stages of being broken down. This pile right here is fresh. It's manure pulled directly out from my cages, mixed with manure and shavings from inside the shed. In addition, there's some old pumpkins in there, food products, the leftover paper from the shavings bags that I have. Basically anything that's compostable goes in this pile, but the vast majority of it is manure and shavings. So you can see already this pile is mostly made up of fresh material, but if we look closer towards the bottom in particular, we can see that it's starting to break down a bit. I'll zoom in so you guys can check it out here, but on the outside we've got the fresh stuff, but if I dig a little deeper in here, we can see it's getting dark. It's beginning to kind of come together into this mass of moisture-rich material that is reverting to its original composition. We also got another good sign here. Check this out. Don't know if you guys can see that, but we've got some lovely worms here. I've got many different types of worms. Red wrigglers I bought a while ago colonized all my piles, and even though they die in the winter up here, they survive, their eggs survive and go through. So we've got a ton of worms towards the bottom, in addition to the native European, not native, but European earthworms that live in New England. So the center of this pile is already starting to break down, and it's coming along great. Now down this end, we've got two piles of roughly the same age. This one is a little smaller than that one, and it's a little newer. This is my oldest pile, and you can see this thing is really shrunk down. Now this was as big as that new pile over there, but it is basically done. We've still got, you know, eggshells, stuff that's a little harder to break down in there, along with some larger sticks. This is totally fine. I actually like a good amount of material of different size in my compost because that's going to break down over time once I spread it in my garden, giving a home to all kinds of invertebrates and beneficial fungi. But if you want to take a closer look at this, you guys are not going to believe how good this stuff is. So here we go. We've got this fabulous, nice, rich, dark-colored compost, and we can just see how moisture-rich this stuff is. It's fluffy. If I squeeze it, there's literally water coming out of my hand, so you can probably see it right there maybe. And my God, does it smell amazing. And this is ready to go. This is the byproduct of about a year of rotting. All kinds of good stuff in here, and man, do the plants go gangbusters when they get this stuff. And finally, we've got my newest pile here, which is almost entirely kitchen scraps that have been put in here all winter, in addition to a little bit of rabbit manure, but mostly coffee grounds. Here's a spent mushroom bag that I was working on. Basically everything that can decompose, and this stuff is really hot. You can already see it starting to break down really fast. Now the next thing I'm going to do is drop a giant pile of the whole winter's worth of manure right on here. All this hot stuff will be towards the bottom. The worms and fungi will colonize that first, work their way up through the pile. I could stir it in. That would technically give me somewhat better results, but since this is in contact with the ground in a forested area, you can bet that the fungi from this area have already colonized in, and the stirring up of that would disrupt the mycelium, which is the fungal, if you want to call it, root system, basically. And the benefits I would get from stirring it up would kind of be canceled out by the fact that I took out all that good mycelium. So I'm going to let that do its thing. Once that compost finishes, there's nothing left to do but shovel it into a wheelbarrow and spread it where I want it to go. Now, this may look like a low pile, but there is a deceivingly large amount of material here. And again, it's so fertile. I can't stress enough how much this does for your plants. My garden is probably somewhere between 80 square feet, thereabouts, and this will cover the garden in about 4 or 5 inches. The benefits you will get from this is just mind-blowing. So I really cannot emphasize enough. Don't waste that rabbit manure. Sell it if you can. If you can't, put it to good use. Don't stress about making a fancy compost pile. Let it rot for a year or two, and then you will have the best fertilizer and the best soil that you've ever seen in your life. I'm not exaggerating. Here in New England, we don't have any topsoil. It got wiped out by the glaciers in the Ice Age. If I were to dig down about an inch here, you'd instantly hit rocky, yellow mineral soil. It's almost impossible to dig a hole because of how many rocks there are. And I've been doing this with chicken manure first, and then rabbit manure once I switched over to rabbits, for probably close to, I would have to say, 15 years now. And in my garden, you can sink this shovel in 2 or 3 times and not hit anything but rich black soil. There is so much topsoil that has been built by this, it's not even funny. So, you know, when people say animal agriculture can cause problems with the topsoil, I say you're crazy. This stuff is topsoil building machines. So if you've got an area with poor soil especially, you can really add a ton with rabbit manure compost. You'd be amazed at how much you build up. You chip some trees up, you add the manure, and you are in business. But I want to leave it there today, guys. The dog is getting antsy in the background, and I have a lot of compost to spread in addition to the rest of my wood chips. I am looking forward to summer. Got all kinds of fun stuff coming up, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next videos. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you want to chat. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.